We often think of poems as something kind of to the side, and it turns out when life gets serious and when someone is getting married or someone dies or our life gets hard, suddenly poems get really important. And I think that a silk censer could be a situation where a poem could get really important. Silk is a material that humans love for many reasons that are already obvious, but it turns out it loves us too. It's completely biocompatible. So silk can appear anywhere in the body and the body will accept it. About 20 years ago, David Kaplan, a researcher at Tufts, figured out how to liquefy the silk cocoon. It has tremendous medical potential. It's quite miraculous. I've locked into one moment in the trajectory of that development, which was a biomedical silk film that was being developed as a sensor under the skin. And in order to get it to act as a sensor, it has to be nano-imprinted or nanopatterned. So it has to be written at a very small scale. And I thought if a sensor needs to be written, I would like to think very much about what might be written there. I wanted to really consider silk's international history. It's a material that originates in China 5,000 years ago and connects much of the world in trajectories that are not one way. It's truly an interface between many, many different cultures. So I would go from one lab where they were inventing silk skin replacements to a very traditional embroidery research workshop where experts were practicing the form, to a museum where I'd see a poem written by a woman in silk from the 4th century. And I wanted to think about how silk would inform the structure of a poem. So at the DNA level, silk self-structures in the form of a beta sheet, like a weft thread. And then when I got to Japan, I realized that the silkworm writes in exactly the same way, that back and forth snaking motion. And there's a written form called a bostrephodon that's a right to left, left to right form from the Greek Phoenician writing system. So the bostrephodon became the model for the poem, and I knew that the sensor will look like a cocoon, and it will look like a silkworm inscribes a cocoon, but within that inscription will be letters. Can I read just the very beginning of the poem? It said that silk filature began in China under a mulberry tree in a teacup resting lightly in the slender hand of the empress, Xi Ling Shi. A brin unfurls from the frisson tangle and she reaches in, begins to reel filament from the soft envelope of the cocoon. That is how people like to tell it. You know the Nigerian proverb, until the lions have their own historians, history will always be told by the hunters. If you don't know it, why not?